Hey, what's up everybody? It's ThunderBob, and tonight we're going to be taking a look at Hades 2. I've been a huge fan of Supergiant Games all the way back in the original release of Bastion in 2011, and I've played and loved basically everything they've put out since then. The original Hades was released during a pretty difficult time in my life. I lost both of my parents about 5 years ago, and Hades was one of those comfort games that helped me get through some pretty dark times. To this day, it's one of my favorite games of all time, and the storyline, and especially the ending, which dealt with bringing a broken family back together, really resonated with me. So Hades 2 had some pretty big shoes to fill, and overall, I have to say it succeeded. This game had some of the best gameplay, systems, art, music, story of any recent big budget game that I've played. It takes everything that worked in the original and tweaks it and expands upon it and refines it until it is nearly perfect. So let's start by talking about the story. Overall, the story works pretty well here. The first game had you play as Zagreus, son of Hades, who attempts repeatedly to escape from the Underworld but is sent back to the halls of Hades every time he dies. That's the framing device for the roguelike elements of the first game. And in the second game, you play as Melinoë, who is Zagreus' sister. Her family is kidnapped by Hades' father, the Titan Chronos, and she must try to reach him and stop him. But as he is the master of time, she is repeatedly forced to restart over and over again. And that's the framing and setup for the second game, which feels pretty similar to the first. The story is told mainly through interacting with the different godly members of your family and other mythological beings in your home base during your runs both in the underground and above ground areas, and as you beat the various bosses. The writing and voice acting is impeccable and really elevates the entire experience. And while many of these characters do return from the original, all of the new ones are just as strong and really compelling. I gotta say, overall, I really enjoy the story. It is still really strong here. It's one of the big motivating factors to continue playing the game for me. But I feel like I have one issue with the story, and it's maybe my only issue with the entire game, and I think the ending is pretty weak. And this section, I'm going to have some spoilers for both the original and the sequel, so if you have not beaten either the first or the second game, or you want to avoid spoilers, just skip ahead to my next section. So what I want to do here is kind of talk about the ending of the first game, and then compare it with the ending of the second game, and just kind of walk through why I think it doesn't work quite as well. And in that first game, you are Zagreus attempting to escape from the Underworld over and over again, and eventually you do manage to reach the surface, defeat Hades, and escape. But then the hook is that you meet your mother, Persephone, who had escaped Hades long ago, and then you die again. You reach the surface, and then Zagreus just dies and returns to the Underworld. And it turns out one of the main factors on why Hades would not allow him to leave is because he cannot survive outside. He's got the same curse that Hades does. He can't be outside for very long. So you die and you return to the Underworld over and over again. But each time that you escape, you have some interactions with Hades, like in the halls. You have some interaction with Hades, just before his fight with him, and then you interact with your mother, and then you do this about 10 more times, and each time it introduces a little bit more of the story and a little bit more of the motivations for your father and your mother. Ended up getting to understand kind of his mindset and his reasonings, and it kind of turns out that he maybe isn't such a bad guy. He's not a hero per se, but he really isn't the great villain that he's made out to be. And, you do that, it's about 10 or 11 times, I can't quite remember, but during the final run, to get the true ending, you get to Hades again, but this time he steps aside and he refuses to fight Zagreus. And it's just a really amazing moment. He just steps aside, lets you leave, you walk, you reach your mother, and she reveals that she intends to return to the Underworld and reunite as a family, and Charon ferries you both back to the Underworld. And honestly, this is one of the strongest endings of any game I've ever played. You take the boat ride back, and the music swells, and the family reunites, and it's honestly, I was playing this ending just a couple of weeks after losing my own parents, and the themes of like reuniting the family and everything, it hit really hard. It was very impactful, it resonated with me, and I think is one of the reasons that I really love the ending of Hades 1. It hit all the right notes, it just really impacted me. And I feel like Hades 2 doesn't quite stick the landing as well as the first game. They kind of try to pull the same ending by turning Chronos from an enemy into kind of a kindly grandfather character in the end, but it doesn't really feel as earned as that first game. In this game, you find a weapon that you need to defeat Chronos for good, but you need to kill him in both the past and the present. So Melinoë contacts Zagreus, gives him this weapon in the past, and then when you go to kill Chronos in the present, it is revealed that Zagreus could not go through with it, and instead he convinced Chronos to join the family, and there's kind of a cute cutscene where he plays hide and seek with a young Melinoë. But apparently this is just a possible past, and none of the characters remember this except for Zagreus and Chronos. But he is changed, and in the present, he releases Melinoë's family, and becomes the doting grandfather. And it's kind of like, oh, now he's good, or at least he's not trying to kill the family. But my issue is it really doesn't feel earned. In the first game, you have like hundreds of interactions with Hades and your mother to reconcile their differences and you reunite the family. Every time you die and you return to the halls, you would interact with Hades. Every time you got to the end, you would interact with Hades. You'd then interact with your mother, and you'd hear like kind of both sides of the story, and it really, it was quite elaborate and explained a lot of things. But I feel here, you only run into Chronos a handful of times before you get to this end cutscene, because there's two pathways. You only see him on the underground pathway, and the dialogue is nowhere near as meaningful as Hades. It seems like, he's just a generic villain. He's just a generic villain. Oh, time travel shenanigans. Now he's a doting, nice grandfather. And while overall the story is good, the ending just does not stand up to that perfect finish of the original, and it's the only negative I have for the entire Hades 2 experience. So let's get into some of the other areas. The gameplay. Hades 2 has some of the best gameplay in the roguelike genre, or really any action game. The controls are tight and responsive, both with a controller or a mouse and keyboard. I do prefer the controller. And in fact, this is probably the perfect Steam Deck. I have played more than 100 hours of this game, pretty evenly split between my PC and Steam Deck, and it is a great experience on either system. The setup is quite similar to the first game, except everything is really bigger and better. Now, instead of a single path to escape Hades, there are two different options. You can head downward to fight Chronos, or upwards to try to stop Typhon, who's assaulting Olympus. You select one of 6 very unique weapons that all have different aspects you can unlock to further change up how they play. You collect boons from one of about a dozen gods and other upgrades that substantially change how you play. You select the keepsake to bring along, and after defeating each of the 4 bosses, you can change those out as well. You get a basic attack, a special attack, and a cast, and each of these have an Omega version that you charge up and use mana, a new addition in the sequel. And every weapon has a different attack and special that are further augmented by the various weapon aspects, boons, and keepsakes, or just an endless amount of options and customization. I think what's most impressive is how balanced everything feels. I change weapons basically every run, and I try to purposely pick different boons, arcana, and keepsakes, but nearly every run I feel like I've just had the most broken build that I could never top, the best run I've ever had, and then my next run, which is completely different, feels just as amazing, just as fun. And there are just hundreds of different setups that are all really competitive, and I rarely finish a run feeling unsatisfied. And this is, your typical roguelite formula. You go run after run, attempting to get as far as you can, ultimately failing, returning to the hub. You interact with a number of different characters and progress the story in the hub. You unlock new game mechanics at the Cauldron, you upgrade your weapons, you interact with the Arcana system, and the Arcana system basically replaced the mirror upgrades from the original game. You essentially unlock a big grid of ability cards. You can activate up to 30 grasp worth. They have different costs associated with them, and in some cases they're automatically enabled based on the conditions. Like if you have everything in a row turned on, a certain card will enable things like that. So you have to look at the cost of them, but also it's kind of like a Tetris puzzle where you're trying to activate as many of these things as possible. And then every run gets you different meta currencies that allow you to unlock new things in town, upgrade your capabilities, and push further on your next run. And all of these systems are nearly perfectly paced to give you something new after each run and have a good sense of progression. With everything unlocked and with a decent amount of game knowledge, you can beat each route in like 15 minutes, I think is my quickest run. But it's the hundreds of hours of progression and story that really keep you replaying over and over. You eventually unlock the ability to increase the difficulty and earn more rewards on each run, and even after the credits roll and you get the ending, there are still a ton of additional things to unlock and an epilogue that'll keep you playing this for hundreds of hours. And gotta talk about the graphics here. I love the look of this game. While it's not anything incredible on a technical level, the style and the art are simply amazing for this type of game. The art is vibrant and colorful, but even when the screen is covered in enemies and attacks and, you know, there's just so much going on the screen, everything is still very readable and understandable. Each of the different biomes look unique with different enemies, backgrounds, settings, doodads. Like, there's just so much on every single screen. Every character in the game has just incredible art when you interact with them, and while there's very little animation, the voice acting really makes all of the characters come alive. The game has just a killer soundtrack. The ambient music in each level is snappy and keeps up with the pace of combat, but it's really the couple of voiced songs that are sung by the characters in the game that really add to the atmosphere and the vibe of the game. So final thoughts. This is one of the best games of all time. It exceeds the original in nearly every way except for the slight stumble in the ending. The game is nearly twice as long as the original, with more ways to customize the way you want to play, and the level of polish, balance, it's just nearly impossible to achieve. If you've never played the original, you should really give both of these games a chance, as they're both nearly perfect and really complement each other. If you did complete the first game, you deserve to play the second game. You should jump right into this now that it's out of early access and the full game is out. It is nearly perfect. And I'm really sad to say I'm finished with the game. You know, I'm still going to go back. There's a couple of more things to unlock, but I've seen the credits and the epilogue, and I'm feeling like I'm just about done. But I'm excited to see what Supergiant Games comes up with next. And I know that Hades is a series I will be returning to for years to come. I'm going to end the video there. I do really appreciate everyone who watches. If you got any thoughts, drop me a comment below. If you like what I'm doing, please like, subscribe, and just thank you, everybody. Have a good night.